You know, there are some folks online that would lead you to believe with all of their doom and gloom that the United Football League is already just cooked. Pack it in, guys. It was a good try. Yet another spring football league failure. Like this is the AAF or some shit. And to that, I say bull. The United Football League in its third week of the 2025 season just had its craziest, most entertaining week to date this season. I'm going to tell you everything you missed. Let's get right into it. To kick off the weekend, Arlington traveled to Birmingham to take them on in their home opener. And last week, while I had predicted Birmingham to win this game, it was strange. It was pretty much the field goal and Birmingham turnover game in the first half. And going into halftime, Arlington had a 9-0 lead. Arlington themselves, their offense was functionally useless, especially in the red zone in the first half. And for Birmingham, it was just miscue after miscue, after turnover, after penalty, after another penalty, after 4 penalties in one drive, after turnover, and it was a disaster. This game was a train wreck from every angle. Arlington had all these gift turnovers and they couldn't put up more than 3 on them in the first half. And in the second half, their offense was even worse, not putting up a single point. It was, if they weren't running for a yard up the middle or getting a little 4 to 5 yard dump off route in the short gain, they weren't getting anything. And that is a huge point of concern for Arlington. Birmingham continued in the second half to treat the football like a tax incentivized charitable donation. They had nothing going on all game until the final drive, where probably the most controversial play in the United Football League this season, maybe ever. Basically, what had happened was there was a false start on a 4th and 6. It was not called on the field, and the play was ran. Everything was a mess, discombobulated. Half the players on the field weren't even moving, so it was like, hey, that was a false start. Probably shouldn't be doing this right now. Play was allowed to continue, and Matt Corral throws an interception. Fucking shocking. Basically, in the United Football League, if you were not familiar, anything and everything can be reviewed, particularly within 2 minutes, or I believe the rules within 5 minutes. The booth really takes an extra focus to make sure that they're getting stuff right. Play gets turned over, and if I'm a Renegades fan, I probably feel robbed. The problem with that is that it was called correctly by the letter of the law. If the officiating had been done properly in that scenario, the play never would have been run to begin with, because it would have been blown dead as the ball was getting snapped. That was a misstep by the officiating on the field, not the rules process itself. I saw a lot of just absolute idiots who do not understand the fundamentals of how football work, arguing, basically saying, yeah, but the Renegades shouldn't get penalized for it. Yes, they're not getting penalized. Birmingham is getting penalized on a play that never should have been allowed to run through. Get that through your skull. The only difference between this happening in this situation and if it were to happen in an NFL game is, in an NFL game, there isn't that layer of review on the back end. That being said, with the super challenge system, Birmingham's head coach still had a challenge. So even if they did not go and decide to just review it right then, all Birmingham's head coach would have had to do was use his challenge, because you can do that with challenges in the UFL. Actually, that is something that I think the National Football League needs to adopt. I understand why it stings, though, if you're an Arlington fan. I get that. Anyway, getting back down to reality for Arlington, my huge concern is that if their run game isn't working, they just look like they've never played football before on offense. Their defense had a pretty strong performance, although it was aided by just Birmingham doing a lot of chicanery and just tomfoolery. If I'm Arlington and I'm going into this next week on offense, I am very, very concerned. They do have an offensive identity, but their offensive identity is based around a run game that has only worked in one game so far this season, and it is the weakest winning team by far. For Birmingham, all this game did was confirm any biases that you might have had after watching Matt Corral's performance last week. my first red flag for him, and I am 99% sure I am on record saying this, is that yes, he was just a little bit better than Magoo, but he is wholly inconsistent. He is good for at least one dumb turnover a game, apparently more, and if the run game's not going, which it never has been, how can you trust this offense to get anywhere? Thing is, you can't. Matt Corral, this has been a problem for the last 2 games he's been in, and it's gotten worse each game, and the running game has gotten worse each game. There is an O-line problem in the United Football League, which is kind of to be expected because there is an offensive line talent problem in the NFL. So obviously, any lesser league, there is going to be a larger problem. With Birmingham, time will tell, but frankly, right now, as they stand, they're not even a playoff team, let alone in any sort of contention to repeat. And moving on to Saturday, the Houston Roughnecks head up to Memphis to take on the Showboats. You know, even though both of these teams came into this week 0-2, I predicted Memphis to win in this game in very convincing fashion, and that just straight up did not happen. Now, Memphis did lead 11-3 at halftime, and it looked like another bad game from Houston all around, especially on offense. And then they did the thing that everybody and their mother said that they needed to do since week 1, probably since halftime of week 1, and that was bench Anthony Brown. Every single time Anthony Brown has gotten benched, the offense has looked better. Now, granted, the offense did not look fantastic for the Roughnecks. It just looked serviceable, which is all they needed because their defense has been doing really well for the majority of the season. Obviously, week 1, they went up against a Battlehawks team that just wasn't losing that game. After making that move, they end up taking a 15-11 lead. Henderson threw a touchdown, and then the defense had a pick 6. And it was great that the defense had a pick 6, don't get me wrong, but I would have still trusted the offense to get something done if that were just an interception, and that was not the case with Anthony Brown in. And look, don't get me wrong, I love analytics. Analytics are very important, but you cannot measure vibes, and vibes are what win you football games. So I am putting that pick 6 on the vibes changing. I think if the vibes don't change after halftime, after benching Anthony Brown, that interception gets dropped because those were the vibes of the Houston Roughnecks up until that point. And then another interception. How about that? And guess what? The offense drives down the field, and yeah, they don't score a touchdown, but they're able to get into range to at least put points on the board. Now it's an 18-11 ball game. Memphis did manage to get back to the end zone on a Troy Williams touchdown run. They made it a game. They were not able to get the conversion. They were down by 1 point. They decided to go for 2 to try and close it out. Honestly, in spring football, great move. Overtime in spring football has got to be probably the dumbest concept ever imagined. They go for 2, weren't able to get it, can't get the 4th and 12 conversion, and Houston walks out with a win. And to be completely honest, to me, even though both of these teams were coming in at 0-2, this felt like an upset. If you watch my week 2 video at the end, my predictions that I predicted Memphis winning this game and this being the game that completely changes things and turns things around for Memphis, and that didn't happen. It looked like it was going to in that first half, but it didn't happen. And for Memphis, this has got to feel like a huge disappointment because on paper, coming into this week, they probably should have won this game. Honestly, maybe I overestimated them. Maybe they're not as good as I thought they were last week, and time will tell. But for Houston, this has to feel huge. This is huge for Houston. Their defense didn't have a wasted performance. Their offense did just enough to win, which is worlds better than anything they were doing before. And with Henderson starting, I really think that these changes might be enough for them to make some noise moving forward. And especially with the conference that they're in. They're in a very, very weak conference. It's a small chance. I don't think it's a big chance, but with how they looked this week, I give them a small chance of being able to make a playoff push. And I really want to put an emphasis on it being a small chance because, frankly, I still don't have faith in that coaching staff, and it's going to take a lot more of these wins to change that. And next up, we had the Brahmas and the Panthers, and this was the first game of the Sunday slate, and it did not disappoint. This game was in Ford Field. The Panthers just came off an ugly loss. Interesting little nugget going into this game is San Antonio did let their offensive coordinator go in the middle of the week last week after that questionable week 2 game and questionable start to the season. And frankly, I'm going to be honest, this was a move that I did not agree with at the time. However, their offense did look a lot better this week, and the special teams play of the week happened in this game with a blocked field goal in the first quarter by San Antonio, and San Antonio's own special teams field goal unit would also go 3 for 3 in the first half, which was nice. They were looking good, including it was a pretty long one. I believe it was either 56 or 57 yards. I'll have to check that by destroying, but they looked really, really good, and just keep that in mind for later. And for Michigan, offensively, I don't believe that Timu Lamar Jackson got the start. However, that did not last very long. He would come in the second quarter and bring the game within 2 points with a little nice option touchdown run. And eventually, he put them in position to go up 10-9 at halftime. And in the second half, this is where this game really picked up. And immediately, Michigan is driving down the field, and Bryce Perkins gets himself another little option touchdown. When I said San Antonio's offense looked better, they kept it up too in the second half especially, and their offense started things off with an Anthony McFarland touchdown reception. When San Antonio did something, it looked like Michigan had an answer, and vice versa. And last week, I said that Michigan was too good to lose this game. Now, I will stand by that. They are too good to lose this game, and they won like I thought they would. What I did not have, though, is San Antonio coming in and looking like they could keep up. I did not expect that to be the case at all, and they just kept fighting and kept fighting. They tied it up in the fourth quarter with a long pick six, which frankly was just a bad decision to throw by Perkins. As much as I enjoy watching Bryce Perkins play football, and as good as I think he is, that was a tough one. But then even after that, even after giving that up, immediately he just goes and he drives Michigan into field goal range with 51 seconds left in the game and puts them in control. And San Antonio fought back. San Antonio had a ton of fight in them this game, and they managed to get into field goal range themselves, and it looked like they were going to tie it up, and then Destroying just misses the field goal. And it's weird because he had made a longer one earlier in the game. That's a tough way to lose a ball game, but Michigan looked like their old selves in this win. I have a lot of confidence with them moving forward. I do expect to see them in the playoffs in their conference. And for San Antonio, yeah, they're 0-3. Yeah, they're bad. And I don't think they even have an inkling of a shot to make the playoffs this year, frankly. But they're watchable. And that's something, because when you're watchable, anything can happen. That should be the UFL's slogan. And with the final game of the weekend, we have the most anticipated game of the week, most anticipated game of the season this far, with the DC Defenders going into St. Louis, going into that absolutely rowdy atmosphere and rowdy crowd and taking on the Battlehawks. And holy shit, did DC deliver. Now, last week, I did not give them much of a chance to win this game. I said St. Louis was going to win this game, and I was incorrect. However, what I was correct on is I said that if DC even had a chance to go and win this game, that they were going to need to put a lid on the Battlehawks run game. And put a lid on it, they did. DC's defense was just playing out of their minds. They picked off Manny Wilkins 3 times, and they recovered a fumble for him once. I think they even forced another one, but that one got jumped on. And without a rushing attack on their side, completely with DC just stuffing the run, no rushing attack on their side, St. Louis looked flabbergasted. They looked confused. They looked lost all game. They had their moments, don't get me wrong, but DC was in control of this game for 95% of it. And another fun little nugget about the DC Defenders is over the course of last week, the Defenders and defensive coordinator Greg Williams parted ways, and defensive coordinating went to, I believe, his son. What I learned is that apparently cover 0 means that the offense is going to score 0 points, because that worked. And while the Defenders are looking like the team to beat right now through 3 games, I do still have some concerns. I'm going to take this down a notch. I am a DC fan. My homerism is going off through the roof, but I'm going to take this down a notch because I am concerned about the passing game and the offense in general. Jordan Ta'amu did have a couple of interceptions on his own, and while he made some insane plays, that's going to be something to watch, and teams are going to key on that moving forward. That just needs to get cleaned up a little bit. And overall for the Battlehawks, I'm not super worried about them. I expect them to be in the playoffs. Not a lot of other teams in the league are going to be able to replicate what the Defenders did. And that is what you missed in week 3 of the United Football League. Now let's get into some predictions for next week. The first game of the week is going to be Memphis at Michigan, and I have Michigan in this. I just don't see Michigan letting their foot off the gas after that game last week. And I think the boats made it very clear that they are taking in water and nobody is coming to rescue them. I can't trust the showboats anymore. This is Michigan by at least 2 scores in my book. Then after that, the Battlehawks are going to Arlington to take on the Renegades. And honestly, there is no chance in hell that the Battlehawks lose this game. The Renegades are trash. Their defense is decent. Their offense is just as mid as it gets. And I think after that loss this week, the Battlehawks are just going to come out guns blazing. They're going to take no prisoners. This is going to be a beatdown. I'm thinking something along the lines of 36-6. I actually think this game and how it goes may set off a chain of events that lead to the United Football League abandoning the concept of spring football in Arlington, Texas, or even Texas as a whole. And the next game is the Stallions going to Houston to take on the Roughnecks. And you know what? This might be a hot take. I'm taking Houston. With how Houston's defense played this past week, and now that we know that their offense is capable of capitalizing on that to a degree, I see there is nothing in this game that suggests to me that the Birmingham Stallions will win. Matt Corral has not put anything on tape that tells me he's not going to throw 2+ interceptions in this game. There's nothing that tells me the Stallions' running game is going to go well. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I am expecting the combined total for this game to be under 30 points. And I think the Roughnecks continue their momentum from this week, and they come out and they eke out a win. And I think after this weekend, we are looking at this Roughnecks team in a completely different light. And then closing out the week, we have the San Antonio Brahmas traveling to Audi Field in DC to take on the Defenders. And this might be my own homerism talking, but I have DC by 2 scores. I'm thinking 26-10 or something like that. And even though the Brahmas looked a lot better this past week, I don't see them going into DC and coming out with anything but a loss and a sour, perhaps lemony taste in their mouth. And if you love spring football or you just need that regular fix in a pigskin in your veins at all times, go ahead and give this video a like and hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be doing these every single week of the United Football League season. And I have been John Morris, and I will catch you later.